And guys, please let's do the most important part first, because let's do the historical side. And at the end of that, and I will let you walk around again. You can do the sales again, and it makes it easy also to take up pictures. But first of all, welcome also inside the slave house of Goree Island. And like I told you, this house was the latest one, the last slave house on the island by the Dutch in 1776. But also inside this house, there is a different cells you guys will see, because we want to walk around inside this house with cell by cell. 150 to 200 slaves used to hold over here at that time, separate on different cells, men, women, young girls, children, but include 27 other slave houses, because there were 28 slave houses. Most of the buildings beside to the ocean in this island was slave houses. But I told you the first one was built by the Portuguese in 1536, and this one was built by Dutch in 1776. That was the same years when you guys have your independence in 1776. It was the same year when the last slave house built on Goree Island. And this similar island also was discovered right before the American was discovered, because America was discovered in 1492 and the island was discovered in 1444. And all the slaves were over here, they were from all over to the West African coast, because this island was the most important slave trading center in West Africa because of the position of the island in geography. It's so close to the American coast. That's why they were shipping the slaves from here to America straight up, but they were just taking slaves from all of the West African coast to this island. All the trades was triangular trade, because it was three different parts. There was Europe, Africa, America. But at that time, they were not selling the slaves with some currency, because they were just exchanging them with guns, tobaccos, mirror, alcohol, blanket, jewelry. But also they used to sell the slaves with different values. The values of the men, that was only depending on their weight and also on their muscles. They used to weigh the men, and their minimum weight, it was a 60 kilo, very close to 120 pounds. And why they used to weigh the men? Because they were just picking up the men who were strong, the men who were speed, because they were using them for the fields. But also the men who were 60 kilos, who were 120 pounds, or over that, they were sold same price to the Belgian girls. Why? Because women were sold 4 times cheaper than them, because the women were so useless at that time. Because they was only using the women, some of them less than 60 kilos. First of all, they were holding them in these houses, but separate them on different cells. Because there was a special cells for them, and that special cell was just the cell where they used to feed them for 3 months if they can reach the weight. Why 3 months? Because 3 months were the time they were holding the slaves in these houses before they were shipping them out, because the boats they was using, it was only some sailboat, and each of those sailboats were taking 3 months to just cross the ocean Atlantic. After 3 months, if they weigh the slaves again, if they find some men always less than 60 kilos, less than 120 pounds, and they were selling them in the continent, but more cheaper because they were selling them for domestic slaves. The price of the Belgian girl or the price of the man were just equivalent to a bottle of rum or with a gun, alcohol. But if it was a woman, 4 times cheaper, woman was just exchanging with a necklace or with a blanket. 4 times cheaper. And please, with your permission, let's see the next one. Let's say the spirit. One of the main cells, 3 cells in this side, but also straight there. There is 2 more cells. And like example, this cell inside is a 2.60 by 2.60, but it was for 15 to 20 men inside at the same time. Sitting on the floor, their backs also used to be against to the wall, and also around their necks, on their hands, on their ankles, with some shackles, with some chains. But they were only released free once a day, because their toilet used to be outside, but they was not allowed to use them more than once, because they were not allowed them to use those restrooms more than once a day. That's why the slaves used to live also in these houses with very bad health condition. Include the biggest problem of this island was water problem at the time. They were only holding some waters in some containers, But in those containers, sometimes they used to find also some rays, mouse, bugs, different parasites die in, but that was the same water they was given back to the slaves. That's why with the first plague epidemic entered of the island, the plague was to start from this house. That was when a lot of slaves were found out sick. But I told you the slaves who were found out sick in these houses, their only solutions were to throw them on the ocean because they were afraid to the ones who were sick to they contaminated the other ones. Tell your head, my head, buddy.
Thank you.
And if you look at carefully, guys, and it's a very tiny gallery from there to here. Make sure you see it. And this tiny gallery was for children, but it was only for the children who were 7 years to 12. They were separated with their mothers, because if they were less than 7 years, they were sold with their mothers. But if they were up to 12 also, they were just put with the men because it was considered that they are men. And also they were just inside this cell, naked, laying on the floor, but tied inside over here. They were just like sardines inside the camp. That's why at the times there was a lot of kids who were dying inside these cells over here. And I told you the values of the men, it was only depending on their weight and also on their muscles, but the value of the kids, that was only depending on their teeth. Like a stock, if they were like a goat or like a horse or like a cow. But each of the child was sold with a small piece of mirror. Mirror was equivalent to the price of the child. Why they were selling the child at the times? Because of the two reasons. The first reason, because at that time also in American plantation there was some kids work. The second reason, some people used to buy some kids also to raise them. And what was sad at that time, because at the same time sometimes their mothers or their fathers can be somewhere inside these houses, but they can hear them children crying, but you think they can do anything? Their parents? No. Because I told you, even when the parents were inside their cells, around their necks, on their hands and their ankles, it was some charcoals around all their bodies. But also there was some special cells called some punishment cells, and those punishment cells were for the ones who were trying to be revolters, troublemakers, rebellions, you know. Watch out your head when you're coming out, guys. Young girl cell. I told you the young girls were sold 4 times expensive to the women. But also the young girls, they were only in this house with restroom inside their cells with toilets. Because there was a hole under this concrete, and that hole was the toilet of those young girls for their periods. And also the young girls, sometimes they will get raped in here with their masters who were over here with them at the same time, because the top was for the European masters, the bottom was for the slaves. But the values of the young girls, that was only depending on their virginity and also on their breast. But those European masters, they can sell those young girls easily. They would just borrow the African custom. They would just look out their breasts. The ones their breasts were firm, and they would put them aside. They was considered them for the virgins one. The ones who the breast was not firm, and they was keeping them with the women because they were selling them more cheaper. And I told you, after when some girls were found out pregnant, they used to free them in 2 places, in Goree Island or Saint Louis in north part in Senegal. But in 1815, that was during the Vienna Conference in Australia. That was when Goree Island, Saint Louis, both places were given back to France, and all the mulattoes were just guaranteed to become a French citizenship. But I told you they was considered much better to the other one. That's why at the times they were able to inherit means from their fathers, and also they were able to marry with some Europeans. Because after slavery, that was when colonization sold up to Africa. 4 centuries of slave trade, 2 centuries of colonization. But at that time, the governors, they were just coming by themselves without their families, because they were saying at the time it was a lot of sicknesses. After that, they will find some mulattoes, and many of them was married with some of those mulattoes. That's why even the first French governor who was moved on the island in 1785, his name was Savary of Boufflers, and his wife was one of those famous mulattoes. Her name was Anne Colin Pepin. And those young girls who were mulattoes, they even were giving them some nicknames, because they used to call them signors. Signor was just a broken name which just come from the word senora. That means woman in Portuguese. it says temperate and feeding room. This cell was the cell where they used to hold the men who were less than 120 pounds, less than 60 kilos. They were held over here for 3 months. Excuse me. They were fattened over here with white beans mixed with some palm oils, but it was only for a few months. After, right before they were shipping them out, and they used to weigh them again. If they found some of the men always less than those 60 kilos, they were sold in the continent more cheaper because for domestic slaves. Outside straight, there will be 2 small cells under the steps. It says recalcitrants. If it doesn't make any sense to you, recalcitrants, that means punishment cells. They were just punishing the men who were revolters, troublemakers, rebellions, but also with iron doors, with small iron doors. Because with those small iron doors, that was where they were able to be breathing. But also, the first one in 1991, and I hope everyone knows who's Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela visited the island, and that was the one he was visiting inside. But even his guard doesn't want him to go in, but he forced to went inside the cell. But when he was coming out, what happened is his eyes was turned red, a lot of tears was running all over his face, but it makes sense why he was crying, because it just was remind him when he was in jail for 27 years. The next one at the left side, I told you they both was punishment cells, but the other one have 2 windows. That's why they have little bit differences. But those 2 windows were open there after the slavery. It was when slavery was ended in 1848 by the French temporary government. Because slavery was ended 2 times, but the last time was ended by the French in 1848. But right before the French colonization, in English colonization, slavery ended over there. Few years right before that, because in English colonization, slavery ended over there in 1802. That was after when the Haitian was revoluted in 1802 by the military of Napoleon. Another biggest recalcitrant, but the one is the biggest one. It's grande, which hold more people. Women, cheap slaves, more cheaper, 4 times cheaper to the other ones. That's why we always call them useless slaves. But also they were inside their cells, same condition like the men. Why the same condition? Because also the women had shackles around their necks and hands and ankles. But each of the doors, they used to have also guards, and even their guard was blacks like them, like slaves. They were slaves like them, but they were corrected by those European masters, and they were so good with their own people. 2 more cells there to the right side. Waiting rooms. Those were the cells where they used to hold the slaves before they were shipping them out. They were held over here for 3 months. Sometimes 3 months and a half. It was only depending on the ships who were transporting the slaves. It's straight there. The door of no return. The only reason why that gate is called the door of no return, because when the slave was stepped out over there, they were saying bye bye to Africa, never came back. That was the same door also was used to throw the 6 slaves who were found inside this house. That's why it was a lot of sharp around. But the boat who was transporting the slave were not able to just come close to the door, because there's a lot of rocks in there. But that was a wooden bridge made by palm woods. On that bridge, they used to put the slaves from these 2 first cells 2 by 2. Why 2 by 2? Because 2 people was locked up at the same time. They were chaining 2 people on their hands, on their legs, at the middle of their legs with some iron balls. 10 kilograms, 300 kilos, very close to 20 pounds. Why those iron balls? Because each shipment, some slave always try to skip from there. But even there were some people who can swim very well, they can't go nowhere. Because once they jump on the water because of those iron balls, because of Jack Shuffle, s'il vous plaît, faut pas jouer ici, hein? Okay. And because of those iron balls, they cannot escape to go nowhere. Once they jump on the water, they will sink. Ate by the shark, or there's 2 coin doors before you guys get there. Those was for the guards also. Watching their brothers or sisters trying to skip. The guards were slaves. They were not playing. Some of them tried to skip, they were shooting them straight. February 22 in 1992, that was when the Pope John Paul II was visiting the island. at the middle of that door, that was where the Pope was asking forgiveness. Why? Because he realized it also there was a lot of Christian who was implicated in the slave trade. Christian missionaries, I'm sorry guys. There was Christian missionaries who was implicated in the slave trade. But for the African, their answer was just yes for forgiveness. But not to forget the story of the slavery because slavery has been suffered for a long time. We respect a lot what's been happening in other places. Some bad things been happening in other places. Let's say, example, to the Jews concentration camp, but it was less than 12 years, they talk a lot about it. Slavery been suffered for many years. It wasn't the only place where slaves were sold in West Africa. There was a lot of places. There was Ghana, Nigeria, Benin, even where she's from, very close to here, Gambia. There is James Island. And all those places I told you, goree was the most important one. The top was for masters, the bottom was for slaves, but it doesn't make any sense to me. That's why I always ask myself a question. How can those masters can live with those slaves inside at the same time, and at the bottom, slave were suffered, and bad smells, kids was crying, some young girls would get raped, and the masters used to live at the top where very good condition. The top actually is exhibition in there, but that exhibition is out comment because you have all the details in there. I am so sorry to say that, but all the details are in French. But each of the corners at the top, there's a place where you guys can see the chapels. Right at the middle, between the steps, there was the market, all the buying was happening there. But at the bottom, there will be an office. If the office is not closed, at the left side, and inside the office, there is pictures of the famous people who visited the island, like some famous presidents, like the poor Mandela, and also on the right side, inside the office, there is one of the wooden box. But inside that wooden box, there is one of those iron bolts they were putting at the middle of the two legs of the slaves when they were shipping them out. And also there's one of the hand shackles. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. And that was all the story I have for you inside this house. If you have any question, like I told you at the beginning, you can redo the cells again, take some pictures, and we can continue and see the rest of the islands. Okay. You guys understand everything I was saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
So far, so good?
Yeah.
If you have any question, please don't hesitate, okay?
Okay.
All right, and you can walk around and go to the top.